Tonight on the Game On podcast, power was turned back on against the Hawks on Friday night. Brisbane make one of the all-time comebacks in finals history. And Glenelg keep their back-to-back chances alive after a win on Sunday against Centrals. Let's do this. Welcome to the Game On podcast. My name's Pete, and once again, joined in the studio by Malcolm here. And mate, your highlight from the weekend?
I think Brisbane, in terms of it, was a remarkable comeback. Port as well. They were two great games.
Well, it's the semi-final you wanted after the first week
really
being a little bit.
It was that. Oh, look, I'll be honest. Game Saturday night, and I'd worked at the A2 Grand Final at North on Saturday. And at the start of the game, the Ross Trevor crowd arrived just as the game started.
Yep.
Tell you what, those Catholics can drink. So I reckon we were under. It was ridiculous how busy we were. I reckon I would have been lucky to have seen 5 minutes of the game.
Yep.
So it was just flat out.
You missed an absolute cracker, mate, because...
in terms of that game.
Yep.
So I got home. I did watch the majority of the Brisbane GWS
Gotcha.
game. Yes,
mate. I know we're going to talk about it in a little bit more depth, but the two semi-finals, obviously, a bit of a highlight after, and I mentioned just a minute ago there, of week one being, apart from Sydney and GWS being close, everything else was a bit of a blowout. Yeah,
it certainly was. And you had two semis, which controversial umpiring certainly could have gone either way. Both games. Sicily's stupidity with not running straight at goal. We've got heaps of avenues there.
Absolutely. All right, mate, let's get into Around the Grounds.
Around the Grounds.
All right, and today, as per usual, we're going to talk some SANFL, obviously the grand final this week, but also some underage grand finals there, and we'll congratulate those clubs as long as we go. We're going to take a look at the AFLW and obviously some retiring legends, but we kick off first, mate, with Port Adelaide and their big win on Friday night, and it was a game that they really needed to win, not only for their supporters, but maybe a bit of confidence moving forward.
It was, and I'll say Hawthorn got ahead of themselves. That first quarter, they didn't give it first time. They were arrogant.
Yep.
And really, Port should have been further in front at quarter time. Then, a couple of free kicks. Look, I thought the Chol one in particular, that Lockie Jones was very unlucky.
Yep.
Burgoyne, my original thought was that's a poor tackle and you're a big chance to go for a game. Now watching it again, I'm probably more along the lines of, I can see why he didn't get reported, but I still actually think it was a free kick.
Yep.
He didn't turn him quite enough. But I think the Chol one was very unlucky to say that.
And my man Rioli, who I was on the back of, he was magical, wasn't he?
He was the key. He was Port's key player. Like, he had 8 score involvements, I think, from 12 touches. It was just ridiculous. Every time he got the ball,
something happened. Yeah. And that's part of the reason why I did pick him as probably my X factor.
Yep.
And
he certainly was.
He lit it up. Obviously, Port Adelaide, the fallout from this is that Port Adelaide Ken Hinkley is triggered a clause within the contract that he's going to play for next year. Was it all? Coach for next year.
Yep.
Was it always the case, prelim or bust?
Maybe. I'm not 100% sure. And Ken Hinkley, to his credit, before the game, went, well, hang on, I'm contracted next year.
Yep.
So who knows out of that one? Look, I think if they'd lost, it would have been a pretty hard sell to supporters and all that. But maybe it's more of a huge vocal minority of Port people against Hinkley. And I think still the realistic thing, if you go through Port's list each year in Hinkley's tenure, they haven't had the best list.
Yep.
You can actually make a good case for him overachieving at times.
Yep.
Now, let's remember, Port under Mark Williams were minor premiers 3 years in a row. Now, you can argue there that they underachieved. I don't think you can put a case that Port have underachieved at all during Hinkley's tenure.
Yep. So obviously Port Adelaide there getting the chocolates against Hawthorn. Some key moments, some experienced players held their nerves. but it was actually their young guns that drove the agenda, I suppose, for Port Adelaide on Friday night against Hawthorn.
Oh, look, Burgoyne and Logan Evans was very good. And to Logan's credit, too, he made an error in the last quarter, of which Hawthorn got a goal.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he didn't drop his head from that. His next two plays after that were absolutely perfect. So, look, rap for the kid. Still angry that he was allowed to be a Port player.
Yep.
But he should be playing for Nord in the grand final. Rap for him.
Yep.
And, excuse me, in terms of, but Burgoyne, he was fantastic.
He was.
He got all 10 coaches' votes too and that sort of thing. So, yeah, he was very, very good.
Is this something that has been building for Port Adelaide for those players over the course of the season? Because, you know, Logan Evans obviously comes in as a mid-season recruit.
Yeah, he's been pretty good ever since he came in reality.
Burgoyne was a little bit on and off early, but then has got more and more game time and looks like he's grown in confidence.
It may be that it's the first game he's been put to half back, and so away he went. Look, he's been a little bit inconsistent. Half back, isn't it funny, where you can run straight ahead.
Yep.
And that. And he was good. You can argue, and Moore actually had for Hawthorn, you know, borderline All-Australia and all that sort of thing. He had a pretty average final series in both games for them.
Yep.
So.
Well, talking about Hawthorn, let's dissect them a little bit. They came to town with a lot of high hopes, and obviously supporters were jumping on the bandwagon. Do you think the comment from Ginnivan was a catalyst for Port Adelaide? Because I'm a firm case with Port Adelaide, doesn't matter whether it was in the SANFL back in the day or whether it's now, is don't poke the bear.
Yeah, but then do you think when you're on the ground, hey, shit, I'm going that little bit harder because of what Jack Ginnivan said? I think it's blown out of proportion, all that sort of thing. But it was just dumb. It's more probably
but does it narrow the focus, though, a little bit?
Yeah, well, it more gives the opposition some ammunition.
Yep.
Now, you've got thumped the week before by 15 goals. Hang on. We'll use that. The us against the world and all that sort of, which Port are known for.
And that's what makes them so dangerous.
Sort of thing. It was just dumb.
Yep.
It really was.
Yep.
And I think, as I said, they were ahead of themselves. Warple, there was a couple of them that first quarter made shocking errors. They just didn't give the ball. There was one stage, just give it on the outside and was a shot for goal and just tried to be a hero.
Yep.
And, yeah, I really do think they were already thinking we're playing Sydney.
Yep. Obviously, the game for Hawthorn, that is, some key players didn't quite stand up in the crunch time, and that's probably the most disappointing part. But we will talk about it now. I did have it on our hot topics for a little bit later, but Kenny obviously mouthing off to the opposition after the game. Do you think that's been blown out of proportion? Because
massively.
The airtime that it's got over the last few days is just ridiculous.
But $20,000,
that was what I was gonna say.
For goodness sake. Oh, you got next weekend free, Jack. No airplane for you. Like, for goodness sake. It's mountain out of a molehill.
Yep.
Geez, some of the sledging I've done him over times. And
yep, me too.
And as Mark Harrity responded, he'd be up for millions. Hags, jeez.
Yep.
No, ridiculous.
It was. Where do you see Hawthorn for next year? They're obviously going to be bolstered by a couple of players in the backlines. Is it a case that it will click for them relatively quickly? Because there will be an adjustment period.
Yeah, you also don't know that suddenly they're going to become the hunted. Like, they've probably had a bit of a free rein. They were expected to be bottom four and perform well above that.
Mm-hmm.
And let's also remember they were only the moments from stuffing the game up here against Port in the minor round that they would have been second and had 2 home finals. So it's a final, but we just know. You just don't know. A couple of injuries to key players. But yeah, look, my crack is Sicily.
Yep.
In terms of that last kick for goal, he's 45 metres out, not 60. If he's 60, I've got no problem with the arc trying to get the extra distance.
Yep.
45 metres out. It hit the goalpost 3/4 way up. Neville Roberts, Roger Woodcock, Tim Evans, they kicked that goal in their sleep. Darren Jarman runs straight at goal.
Scotty Hodges.
Oh, just straight at goal. Why, oh why, he broke the basics. Now, and I think the bit after the game too, let's be honest, he was pissed off with himself for missing. Now, Hinkley gets the $20,000 fine. hang on, Sicily was the one who was the aggressor out of it. Now, if you're going to fine Hinkley, Sicily had to get fined.
Mm-hmm.
It's just crazy.
Conduct unbecoming was, I think, the charge.
Well,
I've seen worse.
Oh,
I've seen worse.
mate,
Plenty worse.
I can think of Barmy a few times. And,
Yep.
Oh, jeez, it's
Yep.
ridiculous.
That is. All right, so we'll move on from that a little bit.
So overblown.
Absolutely.
And let's also remember the AFL, and we can have this. This is my rant now or later,
Yep.
whatever. But the AFL, they want footy front and centre 366 days of the year. Yes, that was deliberate 366 days, counting the leap year. Let's remember back to the World Cup when the Socceroos were playing. The AFL so insecure, they released their fixture at 6:32 in the morning
to try and
get a little bit of flavour away from the Socceroos. So this, in a saturation market where if you wanted to, you could listen to talking about football 80 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just blowing. It's crazy.
It is. All right.
It should have been just a letter to him, Ken.
Yep.
Pull your head in. Don't do that
Or a
again.
quick
Over
phone
and
call.
done with.
Yeah, quick phone call.
Ridiculous.
Mate, if I had the sound effect, I'd go bang.
Oh.
I know you've got a little bit of a rule book rant a little
Yes.
bit later, so we'll save that
Yep.
one up and
Yep.
the sound for that. All right, let's move on to the second semi-final there. Played last weekend. The Giants seemingly had everything in hand, 44 points up. What was it, at about the 8-minute mark of the third quarter? And a good mate of mine who's a Sydney supporter and also has a membership to GWS, he's like, I've got a spare ticket for the grand final if GWS make it. Do you want to go? And I went, yep, absolutely. And then 30 minutes later, about 40 minutes later, I think we got a bit ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
Brisbane were good.
They were good. I do think, too, that the umpires got involved. Now, again, let's have another sledge of the AFL. For goodness sake, admit the rule, what the SANFL have brought in, is far better than the guesswork at the AFL.
Yep.
You had the classic thing on the Friday night where a Port guy, it was blatantly deliberate out of bounds, wasn't paid, and yet the one against right at the end where Danaher then got the shot for goal from the boundary line,
Yes.
it was a fair case to argue that it actually hit Danaher's hand as well in the end.
Yep.
And just crazy, just so inconsistent. Get the rule in place where it's not an argument. And Digby Hancock, a mate of mine, was back in town at the moment.
Yes.
Came in to have a look at the SANFL prelim final.
Yep.
And the kick went out of bounds, bang, and he went, there's no argument. Yeah, that's the rule. He's just gone.
There's no
compared
grey.
to the AFL at the moment, that would have been was that deliberate?
Yep.
You know, it's come off the side of his boot. Is it enough of intent? It's just bang. I said, yeah, the rule's there.
Yep.
We know what's going on.
So
You know?
a bit like you, I could probably do my rule book rant here is that I think we should be getting to the stage, and I've been thinking about this actually today a little bit, and I'm glad you brought it up, was I think we should be getting to a stage where the consistency is right through the leagues.
Oh, no doubt about that.
And the only time it should change is obviously for junior football, for obviously space and bits and pieces like that. But I think this has to go from the top right down to the bottom, whereas you can't have one league that has one rule and then another league that hasn't. Why don't we go back to the old school days where everybody plays under the same rules?
Exactly. And look, I think there's also the case there, as Brent Phillips has said, you're watching a 18s game, which has got the anti-density rule in place. Now, Scully dominated 18s because he was competing against one-on-one and competing against guys who were invariably 4 to 6 to 7 inches shorter than him.
Yep.
And as Dick said out of that, it's so hard for recruiters as it is. So let's either have it all together or not at all.
Yep.
And exactly the same.
And that's my key,
Yeah.
is that if everybody knows that this is the rule, obviously players moving from SANFL to AFL will get it.
It's just pig-headed by the AFL not to admit that another competition's come up with a better rule.
Yep.
It's just
I originally thought that it was the testing ground for the AFL. That's what I thought.
Well, that's what we all thought.
Okay, I'm glad I'm not alone.
No.
Obviously, Brisbane really did come back into that game. I know we got a little bit off track there. Where did we see it changing? For me, it was probably Will Ashcroft in the middle.
Yeah, he had he was a huge impact. And all of a sudden, you can't just go Neil. And that was only Ashcroft's 11th game back from after knee reco, which normally guys still a slight. And you got to remember the quicker tempo of a final. So it was extraordinary, his impact on that game. And, yeah, I thought he was crucial. Look, I want to have a whack. It's ironic that they've ended up winning the game.
Yes.
But why we've got this bit in footy, surely it should have been a mouth-watering duel, Andrews versus Hogan. But no, Payne stood Hogan and stayed on with him all game. Hogan broke several records for marks, inside 50s. It's the most marks in 20-odd years. There's quite a few stats. Well, you've got Andrews there, but he's not used at all on him. Now, I just think we've gone so overboard on trying to, so he becomes the interceptor. Well, if the ball's going one-on-one and Hogan's destroying Payne, well,
So you're saying that we've gone a bit too analytical rather than actually what you see.
Right. Yeah, I don't mind if you started that way, but no, he's on fire.
Yep.
Time to put Andrews on him.
Yep. I heard Chris Fagan say that he's keen to show some trust in the player that they could get the job done. But, gee, you're dicing with one bullet here, basically. One mistake and you're out of the finals.
Well, considering they were 44 points down and they should be out of the finals. So, yeah, no, I think he's extremely lucky. I thought that was poor.
Yep. Where to here for GWS? They've still got a very talented list. They probably, like we had on the top of the show there, talking about Kenny Hinkley overachieving with a list that's around the middle of the mark, whereas this list at GWS is actually much, much better, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, look, I think they're the massive underachievers. I had them as before the start of the final series, they were my tip.
Yep.
Now, at the moment, they should be overwhelming premiership favourites. They should have beaten Sydney.
Yep.
They then play Port this week, etc. for the spot, and they're out. They've blown it.
Big time.
How they've gone out in straight sets.
Absolutely.
Oh.
All right, let's just quickly talk about Adelaide. Very, very quickly. Adelaide's re-sign a quartet of junior players: James Borlase, Hugh Bond, Charlie Edwards, and Oscar Ryan. My question to you, very, very quickly, on that side of things is, who's that next best junior coming through at the moment? Curtin's probably the one that, from a draft pick point.
I like both Edwards and Ryan. I think Borlase is a bit lucky. I've still got major questions on him about pace.
Yep.
So that was the only one which remotely surprised me. The other three were pretty obvious.
So size you're happy with, but just that little bit of extra pace.
Yeah.
Charlie Edwards and Oscar Ryan, you reckon, might be the next two that'll take that little leap?
Yeah, I like both of them.
Yep. And Curtin, obviously, high draft pick.
Yep.
Seemed to play a little bit injured this year. The knee just didn't quite look right all year.
Yeah, I'm not sure he was used properly either. It was all a bit bizarre. Moved and, hopefully that'll get sorted out.
This is a case, I heard Blighty talking about this the other night, actually, about his system of getting these young players in and starting them on the half-back line.
Yes.
Is that much...
Kane Johnson was the classic example of that, and Simon Goodwin.
Is it a case we're still playing a little bit from that playbook?
Well, I think with Curtin, they didn't really do enough of that. And he was average defensively in his second game. It was all shit. And then, where do we put him? And again, sure, young Burgoyne showed it.
Yep.
Last Friday night, run straight ahead. This easiest spot to play.
Let him get settled in that and let him go. Yep, absolutely. All right, mate. We one last thing on Adelaide. The Crows were very vocal about attracting an active trade period. Was this a mistake to be so vocal, do you think?
I mean, they're out having a crack. Who knows what else is happening behind the scenes? Look, my understanding is Lukosius is not a certainty to come to South Australia. Mm-hmm. He's spoken with several Victorian clubs as well with his managers. So, look, I dare say Tex, as a fellow broken hill boy, would be having a crack with Cumming and that. Yep. So hopefully that'll still happen. But yeah, I'd be surprised if both Cumming and Perryman ended up at Port, because that's going to be a huge whack at your salary cap.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Unless
a
we
big
know-
thing.
Unless we don't know what Houston's doing.
Yeah, possibly, but it's still
I don't think he wants to leave.
yeah, it's still two big things to come. So yeah, who knows?
Anyway, we'll leave that one where it is for now, but we better get on to this week's games, mate. Friday, September 20, 7:10 p.m. locally here in Adelaide. Sydney v Port Adelaide. What are your thoughts initially on this game, mate?
Well, Port have won the past 8 against Sydney. Beat them by 112 points here. 7 points short of that magical number of 198. But you do have, there's probably a couple of question marks on Port after that game in terms of Horn Francis.
Surely that was just cramp, though.
Yeah, but they thought he'd jagged a driver as well at one stage.
Well, that was a little bit earlier in that, late in the third quarter.
Yeah, so you'd think some Port boys would be pretty sore.
Did
that week off? Traditionally, too, that the prelim finalists, that week has benefited them.
Yep.
Whether now it's nowhere near as much of an advantage because is it too much that they had that extra week
early on,
before, where you have the gap between the finals?
Yep.
Is a wait and see. But if I'm forced, I'm tipping Sydney.
Yep. I think Sydney have only Sydney and Port Adelaide have only played each other at the SCG twice in those run of 8 games. So
and it's been clear and it's been close.
Yeah.
The kick after the siren, which didn't
quite make the distance. Yep.
And so looking, geez, Heaney was that good that first week of the finals. Heaney, Warner, and that, and Warner and Goulden hadn't done that much 3/4 time.
That's right.
And then they came home with a rush, but Heaney played. That was one of the all-time great games. So
did Port Adelaide play their grand final last week, do you think?
we'll wait and see on that one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's talk before we move on to the next game. Your X factor for this game. Who's your X factor for Sydney, mate?
I know it's boring, but Heaney.
Yep.
I just don't think you can go against anyone else. Look, he stands on a guy's head, takes one of the all-time great marks, and then kicks one of the best goals as well to bring the game level with 2 minutes to go. You just have to.
I'm going to go slightly different. I think it's going to start with Brody Grundy in the middle.
Yeah.
For me, I think he's had a little bit of the kick in the bum, I suppose, in the last few weeks towards the end of the season, and I reckon he's priming himself for a big couple of finals here.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting out of that because Jordan Sweet is actually a good centre square ruckman. Actually get some clean centre ruck advantage taps.
Yep.
Hello, Riley O'Brien. Out of that, so it's going to be a fascinating duel.
That's why I think he's my X factor because I think if he gets on top, I think he gives the likes of Heaney, Warner, and Goulden first use of the ball. And what does Sydney do up forward? I mean, do they leave Amadi in?
Huge case that they're too tall.
Yeah.
Especially for night games too.
Yep.
Let's always remember the ball is on the ground in general, that bit more at night level.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see what they do.
Absolutely. All right, we'll talk about Port Adelaide. Your X factor there, mate?
Georgiadis. I'm going to go somewhere different. I like him. Leader.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure that Sydney have got a great. I think it'd be McCartan would go to him, but I reckon his pace might struggle McCartan. So I'm just going to have someone different.
Well, I'm going to stick with Willie Rioli.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that.
But I'm going to say Kane Farrell comes up.
Said today
I didn't hear that on the radio. Okay, so I'll scratch that.
Well, maybe that's who's.
Whether they're playing Ducks and Drakes.
No, they've said that he's been ruled out this week.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm going to stick with Willie Rioli, but the other person that I did actually have on my list is Logan Evans. I reckon he's just going from strength to strength, and I think Port have got him playing in the right spot, and he's doing wonders at the moment. Good. So, do you see Charlie Dixon coming back in for like for Marshall?
Sounds that way. Yeah, I reckon there's big doubts on who. Would you be better off to go for Lord?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it'll be interesting if all of a sudden they're running off Dixon and he looks like he did in the first final where he looked like he needed he does a car show on AA. Mm-hmm. He looked like he needed the car out with him.
Yep.
Then Hinkley does leave himself wide open again.
Yep.
Well, I reckon if he went Lord and Lord doesn't do much, I don't really get criticised anywhere near as much.
Because they tried something a bit different and a fresh player too. That's the other thing. I mean, you've got Wines who's still pretty good. You've got Boak, who's definitely Father Time's caught up with him as far as speed goes. still great intellect and
I think
does what he needs to do.
I think
but
he's
Dixon's
ironically
probably the other one.
I think you can make a case that Boakes had slightly better year than last year, though, which is quite incredible.
Yep. Just at times he's looked a touch
Yeah,
slow.
I agree with that.
That's where I think some opposition can take advantage.
Exploit him.
Yeah, exactly right. All right, let's move on to the other prelim final. This one, licking the lips for this one here, Geelong v the Brisbane Lions. Geelong have had the benefit of sitting back once again to plot out who they're going to be playing against.
Not only that Chris Scott is the master tactician. You know, he dismantled Port beautifully. So he would have sat back, various things there, and that's.
So Stewart will be coming back in for
someone.
For Geelong. You're right, someone there. Does Hawkins get a run? I mean, we're going to talk about this a little bit later in the SANFL, but a player that hasn't played for a few weeks or a period of time, bringing them back in for such an important final.
I don't think you can.
I don't think you can.
No,
can you?
I reckon Neil's done enough too to deserve his spot.
Yep. All right, and Brisbane, obviously the ecstasy of last weekend. Does that carry over, or have they burnt too many petrol tickets to get over the GWS last week?
Yeah, you can always make a case on that either way, but I just think it'll be interesting if any bodies are banged up.
Yep.
So,
yep. Yeah. X factor for Geelong, mate.
I'm gonna go for Stewart to come back in fresh. 3 weeks off, but they would have hammered the hell out of him at training.
Yep.
And he's class act. It'll be really interesting to see Brisbane's tactics on that. Do they play a tagger on him?
Mm-hmm.
Stewart and Dangerfield's the one as well.
And your X factor for Brisbane, mate?
Charlie Cameron, he's due.
Okay.
Yeah, he hasn't done that much in either final yet.
Yep.
So he's due.
So we did talk a little bit about Mr. Septembers. And we probably could have talked about this in the GWS Brisbane talk, but Joe Danaher is putting together a nice little finals package over the last few years, and for me, he's probably your X factor there. As long as they kick straight, that's the
which you never know what him and Hipwood in that regard. But Rayner's the other one. There's a bit of pressure on him to big game. He just floated in and out. I want to see a bit more from him.
Do you see Ashwood? Ashcroft. Sorry. Apologies there.
I wish it was me.
Do we see him backing up again? He just looks like that finals-ready player, doesn't he?
Yeah, he is class. He doesn't fumble. I reckon the younger brother's just as good.
Yep. Scary. All right, mate, let's whiz through a couple of these. Well, actually, before we do that, who makes it to the big dance, mate? Who you tips?
Oh, look, I'm going the predictable. I'm going to go Sydney v Geelong.
Yep, I'm going to go exactly the same. All right, let's whiz through some of these hot topics. Obviously, we talked about Hinkley and the cracks that were showing. Has it got to him?
I actually thought there wasn't very. I thought there was just really very little in it.
Yep.
Hey, Jack, no need for an aeroplane ticket. I thought there was just nothing in it. Like if he'd walked over and you F an idiot but it was none of that. I just
good.
Can't get over it.
Good banter.
Yeah, it's just nothing.
As I said, I know we talked about it a little bit earlier, but it was just interesting that may have been some of those cracks showing that the pressure had got to him a little bit, and he let his guard down and probably bought into it more than anything. But anyway,
look, let's also remember his job's under pressure every minute. Like imagine that. He's got the bloody Port supporters putting Hinkley out, crap, and all that. So the stress he's had to go through. Jeez.
Yep. All right, Dusty to the Gold Coast, mate. This came across, what was it, late Sunday? No, mid-Sunday, I think it was, or late Saturday. What is the benefit for such a young, talented list to have Dusty up there, mate? Are you, let's just say you're giving the keys to the Rolls Royce there. Are you adding him as part of your accessories?
Probably more so that they're still, they had Ablett, Gary Ablett Jr. as their player, and people did jump on that. They still don't drag enough people through the gate, and they're still, in terms. So that's where Dusty Martin fits in a bit.
Okay, so more from a marketing point of view than a playing point of view.
I think so. And look, let's be honest, he hasn't done much for a couple of years, so it's a big call, especially with how many. It's going to be a bloody talented youngster to miss out for him to play, but it's going to get extra bums on seats, like Buddy Franklin did with Sydney as well.
Yep.
And let's face it, those sides probably still do need a draw card.
Yep.
So, and he'll do that.
Do you see Dusty being a teacher or a leader? All reports around Richmond is that he was
a quiet cat.
A good guy within the group.
Yeah.
But outside, no media, no nothing.
No, he's very quiet. So
do you think someone from Gold Coast, like a Rowell or a Anderson or Tuke Miller, could benefit from someone like that just being in the backyard?
Hopefully, and you'd think surely that'd be one thing Hardwick have been putting on him. Right, well, if you're going to come up,
you got to do it.
You're going to be on a reasonable whack still.
Yep.
Hey, I want you to be the teacher. I want you to do this, do that. And obviously he loves Hardwick, so you would think there'd be buy-in in that regard.
Yep. Price-wise, you just sort of mentioned there, what kind of whack would Gold Coast be looking at? Would you look at 350, 400 and go sign me now, or do you a bit of wiggle room there with the bums on seats and the sales of Guernseys?
I think he'll still probably be on more than that. So,
yep. Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Delistings, who might be worth another chance, potentially the move for a fresh opportunity? Is there anyone that has come across your travels in the last few weeks? I know we've got a few coming up.
Not yet. Probably my one. I think Owies for Carlton being told to look somewhere else is the most surprising.
I agree.
So far, he kicked 33 goals. For mine, he was easily Carlton's best small forward. In fact, by a bloody long way.
Yep.
So I find that I think you and then Chincotta not playing in that final. I think they've come up with a couple of mystifying decisions.
Blunders, that's for sure. Were you surprised that Jack Martin was delisted by Carlton?
Well, not so much delisted, but I thought Fremantle were after him. I thought there was going to be a trade there. So, yeah, it's interesting where they might have thought, no, stuff it. It's going to be that low. Let's just bang. Yep. So, yeah, it's interesting.
Injuries definitely caught up with Jack Martin there. All right, mate, let's take a little bit of a quick break. But coming up, Glenelg through to the big dance against Norwood. And the AFLW, the Crows getting the job done with a star player kicking a bag. Port Adelaide were in charge of this game and unfortunately didn't get the chocolates against Fremantle. And a little bit of a look at our retiring legends.
You're listening to the Game On Podcast. We'll be right back after this short break.
Looking to buy or sell your home anywhere in Adelaide, from the hills to the sea? Meet Gary Creeves, your dedicated local agent from Owens Castley Real Estate. With unparalleled knowledge of Adelaide's housing market and a commitment to exceptional service, Gary ensures a smooth and stress-free experience for all your real estate needs. Trust the expert, trust Gary Creeves at Owens Castley Real Estate. Your next dream home awaits. Contact Gary today on 0422 071 317 or on email garyk@ocre.com.au. And for more listings, please visit owenscastley.com.au. Make it happen. All right, mate, we continue with the SANFL. Firstly, we're going to get off with the under-16s and under-18s finals. Congratulations in the under-16 goes to Sturt, and in the under-18s, the Woodville West Torrens winning their respective grand finals at Adelaide Oval last weekend.
Yeah, went along. Sturt 16s were the better side. Their kicking for goal kept South in it to a large extent, and then South missed a couple of themselves where a snapshot where a guy should have kicked it would have made it 8 points to difference.
Yes. With
about 7 minutes to go and missed, and then Sturt got the next goal.
Yep.
That was it. Now, the Glenelg Central's game, in that regard, 1 minute 32 seconds before half time, Centrals were 31 points up.
Yep.
Glenelg kicked,
Woodville West
Torrens.
Yes.
Kicked 2 goals in that last 92 seconds. And suddenly they go into half time, 19 points down, still in the game with momentum.
Yep.
They did hit the front in the third quarter. Then it seesawed every goal back and forth from there.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, young Central's lad did have a shot for goal with him just over a minute to go and kicked it out on the full. Which,
Yep.
It was a bit. Felt sorry for the lad actually.
Yep.
But it was a good standard game. There was a few there. Drafting. The scouts were well and truly around.
Yep.
Woodville on probably a Central side to start with. There was Matty LeRae, who's next year, but was pretty impressive. Charlie Nichols,
Yes.
up forward, and Charlie Nichols. Who's the other one? I'm gonna go to that.
Yeah, you go to that. No, that's right.
Yep.
Obviously, great to see a good healthy mix of clubs through the juniors up to the seniors. Obviously, we're going to talk about Nord and Glenelg in a minute, but congratulations obviously go to those players there while you look up that one there. But we'll talk...
Cochrane was another one.
Yes. We'll keep going there,
that.
but we'll move on to the league. We'll go actually the reserves.
We'll go back to the 18s.
Okay.
We will go back to the 18s. So for Woodville West Torrens, Jack Gray with 4 goals. Had a very good final series. Also kicked 4 earlier on in the game against Sturt and kicked the goal to hit the front there as well as he did in this game. So there's companies, and Jet Hastings was pretty impressive. The younger Filippo and Jevon Filippo did a bit as well. Mm-hmm. So there was certainly there. Trust me, there was a lot of scouts having a look. Tom Cochrane, 22 touches, and Matty LeRae, 22 for Centrals were the two who stood out there.
Yep.
But just trying to think who I would think is around the mark. Cameron Nairn's another one. Talon Reisenberg's a bit of a chance. So there's certainly a lot of kids there they'd be having a look at.
Mm-hmm.
Woodville West Torrens, Rome Burgoyne, the younger brother.
Yes.
I'd be very surprised. He'd certainly be in Port's thinking.
Calculations,
high stats with 27 on the ground. I like Rome. I rate him pretty highly. I think I do rate him even higher than his brother. So that Jet Hastings, 20 touches was very good. Charlie West, as we said.
Yep.
They're probably the ones. So we've named probably 8 to 10 players there. Cade Herbert's another one clubs are having a look at.
Yep.
So, there's
a
lot of
good smattering of SANFL juniors that are going to potentially be put on the draft. Obviously, scouts being at the ground there, it's a highlight for the players themselves to see that. And it wasn't the worst final standard that you could see out there. And
it was a very good standard game. I thought it was an excellent game,
and a good curtain raiser, obviously, to the main game.
There was a few people going, why is there such a gap between the junior game finishing and the start of the league game? Just in case there was extra time required in both grades.
Yep. Good call.
And that's I said, hey.
Yep.
I said to one guy, come on.
Think about it.
I can't. No, rule. I can't work it out. No, it's crazy. Extra time. Oh shit. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Fair call. All right, mate. We better move on to the reserves in the league for last week.
I know we should give the 16s a bit of coverage, and Sturt there, winning in the end 9-16 to 6-10. In terms of the stat for Sturt, look, young Jack Davies with 23. Nate Slade, Matty Slade from Central Sun.
Yep.
Is another one there. Angus Mills, that's Trent Mills, ironically the former South captain in Trent. That'd be where he's, I think he's a maybe in the future. So there's quite a bit there, talent in that Sturt side as well. And the South lad who. Trying to go there. Archie Van Wyck with 31 was excellent, very impressive, and that. So I'd be very surprised and he got the best on ground medal. So there'd be certainly clubs having a look there.
Mm-hmm.
Kane Florence sat with his parents for a fair bit of that game. 13 flight bit, and it's quite funny. He got cramp at one stage. So I yelled out, call him Jason Horn Francis. And his mum and dad were laughing at that,
Yep.
telling his dad, typical Kangaroo Island, get up, come on, no mucking around there.
Exactly what you want. All right. Obviously, we've tried a couple of times. We'll move on to the reserves.
Yeah.
Nord getting the job done against Glenelg. A little bit inaccurate from Nord at times on the weekend, but probably the most notable admission from that reserve side was Matty Panos.
Yeah, look, I'm stunned by it. I'll be straight out. He trained them with the league side. I don't get it. For mine, personally, he didn't move well enough in the second semi in the reserves, and I thought he had to have another game. Look, yes, he's the Rolls Royce in form, but that's a couple of years ago as well. Yeah, big call because I think he'll play.
Okay. We're going to get to that in a minute.
Yeah,
but Nord, obviously one of the better teams in the reserves this year, and Glenelg have been around the mark for the last couple of years. So the depth of both Nord and Glenelg is probably showing that they've made the grand final both, Nord this year, obviously in the league, but also in the reserves as well.
Pleasing improvement from Nord overall because Nord didn't make the five in terms of last couple of years.
Yep.
So they've come through there. Jaden Gale came back and he was sort of like the very unlucky player the first week of the finals. He was the emergency held over, so he didn't play either game.
Yep.
So he came back in, kicked 3, had a fair bit of it. Luke Bogle came fourth in the reserves medal with 28. Liam Robinson, son of Mark, took an absolute hanger. And
I reckon I got a photo of that.
Yeah.
We might put that as one of our backgrounds for our socials advertising.
Got a bit of, it's had a bit of publicity around the traps and Hitman Harding Robinson with the Glenelg guy on the ground because he actually marked it on his neck.
Yep.
So yes, there. But yeah, look, Alex Van Wyck, it's an interesting one because some clubs are interested and some aren't on an AFL.
Yep.
So yeah,
hard to gauge that one.
Yeah, look, there's probably been a bit of a gap. His good's been very good, but he's poor. There's a gap. That's probably where he's got to work on being more consistent.
Yep. Can you make a case for anyone maybe stepping up to that league side if there's a little twinge or a little accident that happens obviously at training over the next few days?
Look, like Luke Bogle and Ben Simpson, I think Ben Simpson's pretty unlucky to have missed out, and he's been good in the cut. I thought he was Nord's best player the week before when Nord got absolutely hammered by Sturt. So he had 25, and by all courts, as I said, I didn't see the game this time. I was working at the parade, but yeah.
The home of football.
Yes.
All right, let's move on to the league game. We'll quickly talk about last week's prelim final. Centrals threw everything at Glenelg and were in the game a little bit there for a period of time, but the class of Glenelg shone through in the end, and they ended up getting up by 38 points.
It did, but geez, I thought they were very unlucky and that's being very polite on some umpiring decisions. I'm sorry. I've now watched Glenelg 6 times this year, and there seems to be a McBean tax. Look, he's a good player, but just let guys compete for the mark. There were 3 or 4 decisions which it was garbage. There was nothing there. Leave the game alone. Let the players decide the result. I thought it was one umpire in particular who was just way too technical, and I thought he really struggled. By a long way, I thought he was easily the worst of the 3. And yeah, that's where my umpiring bit. 6 times I looked after he made a decision and I went, no, his positioning there is terrible too. So
he's not in the right spot to make the right call at the right time.
I thought he had a Barry Crocker.
Yep. Central's probably the surprise packet of this year. They gave it a fair old shake, and they probably did it with a list that you.
Oh, look, for mine, Paul Thomas is Coach of the Year.
Yeah.
Personally, with what Centrals have got, and bear in mind, they didn't have their best player in the finals. Harry Grant gets injured the last minor round game. Bizarrely, the Port Magpies player didn't get suspended for the bump, which concussion, etc.
Yep.
He's their best player, and they've been very unlucky with injuries in general. They've had they lost their ruckman, I think, might have been before the start of the year, round 1.
Yes.
And so, yeah, that's really hurt. Look, I think the Centrals boy who stood up and is Bo Thomas. I I thought he was excellent. Unfortunately, he missed a couple of goals, though.
Yep.
That was the only criticism of his game. I was with Jamie, who we will get on the show at some stage.
Mm-hmm.
So it's his half-brother after the game.
Yep.
And he said, geez, Bo was good. I said, apart from... He said, yeah, exactly. So we were both very much on the same page.
And we've said previously in the last couple of weeks that we know that Centrals are very defensive-minded. Could they kick a winning score? A couple of those goals go the other way. It makes things a little bit more interesting, doesn't it?
And that was the thing with Centrals. If Centrals were going to win, they had to kick straight. And they did.
Yep.
That 10-8, 6-10 had to be at least 10-6, probably 12-4.
Yes.
Really.
Yep. All right, we better move on to the big dance, mate. Norwood v Glenelg. We've got a little bit of a special coming up probably on Thursday at this stage, but we're going to record an interview with Tony Simons from Glenelg and Jacob Kennelly from Norwood. So keep an eye out for that one on our socials and obviously through our podcasts as well. Norwood obviously been one of the form teams all year. You were pretty bullish on Glenelg for a good part of the year as well.
Yeah, look, I've been honest on Glenelg. I believe they've got the most natural ability. I've said that all year. Look, Snook, Bell, Lyons, Allen, and then you're adding in your forward line of Hosey, who came back and was very good. Apart from his kicking for goal was questionable, but Hosey, Reynolds, McBean, for mine, it's way more firepower than anyone else has got. And I've said that all year.
Yep.
I've thought they were underachieving a bit where they should have been. I think maybe a bit of a premiership hangover.
Yep.
But come through and look, they've been very impressive in the finals, as much as I hate to say it. And, I'll be honest, I'm tipping Glenelg. Obviously, I'm hoping I'm wrong.
Yep.
But I just think their forward line power, and for Norwood to win, we're going to need Boyd to dominate, and then Cootie and O'Neill and Lowe to get on top in the midfield.
Yep. Your X factor there is probably Harry Boyd.
Harry Boyd and Bain and Lowe are my two.
He was going to be my X factor there. I think he controls things very, very well. For Glenelg, is Hosey coming back probably the X factor there for Glenelg?
Luke Reynolds for mine. He's still the one, when he gets the ball, a little bit like Rioli, he uses the ball superbly. They get a goal, invariably a shot for goal every time he gets hold of the ball.
Yep. Unbelievable. You're tipping Glenelg. Mate, should we do what we've done previously, tip against, hopefully get the winner?
That's obviously part of my strategy.
There you go, I like it. All right, then let's do that. I'll go for Glenelg as well, but I'll need to wash my mouth out after saying that. But anyway, good luck to both teams on the weekend, and as we've said, we've got those interviews coming up a little bit later on this week. Let's move on to the AFLW, mate. We'll take a bit of a quick look at that. Adelaide take care of the Hawks. Believe it or not, it was the first time that they'd played Hawthorn in the AFL system, but because of the staggered teams coming in, it made it a little bit harder. But Danielle Ponta kicks a record haul of 5 majors. She's taken another step this year and a little bit last year as well. Always been around the mark.
Adelaide, though, losing Eloise Jones for the rest of the year to an Achilles injury, that's a massive injury, and she's probably their X factor. She's a bit of the Rioli type in that way.
Yep.
That's a huge loss for Adelaide.
Yep. Port Adelaide led at 3/4 time, but unfortunately the final term, the comeback from the Dockers at Albion. Again, they lost their captain a few weeks ago. A few little holes just starting to open up for Port Adelaide. They did everything right for 3/4, but just couldn't sustain it.
Finish it. Yeah.
Unbelievable. And just talking about this week's games, are you surprised that we're seeing a game on a Tuesday night for the AFLW, mate?
As we said before, AFL we know where they want their game to be in terms of front and centre every day of the year. So, look.
So this week we've got Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then a little bit on Sunday. But the following week, obviously, the AFL Grand Final. And I know you're going to talk about this in your rulebook rant right at the end of our episode today, so I'll hold off on that. But are you surprised? Are you surprised that there are so many games being played midweek?
Well,
does it make sense?
Well, it makes more sense to play it against the SANFL Grand Final. Put it that way.
We'll talk about that one a little bit later. All right. The Roos, are they taking the mantle of the best AFLW club in Victoria? So. 50-point winners against Melbourne, and Melbourne have been up there, and the Bulldogs have been up there, and yet they're struggling a bit.
Yeah, Bulldogs are really struggling. Bulldogs might beat you and me at the moment, mate. The Roos, there's certainly no doubt whatsoever North Melbourne are hell-bent on this being their season, and at the moment they're ticking every box.
Absolutely. And to finish us off in our second segment here, retiring legends, Ben Brown from North Melbourne and Melbourne. Got the best out of himself, didn't he? Probably a little bit underutilised at North Melbourne, and got his opportunity and won a grand final for Melbourne.
Yeah, look, he was a good player at North Melbourne as well, though. We've got to be fair there. With the Michael Holding run-up for kicking for goal, like, he seemed to be on the runway. We thought he was going to take off to the airport a couple of times. He was on the runway that long. But, yeah, look, and he was important in Melbourne's premiership, so good on him that he departs the AFL.
Well, there's been some legends that haven't won a flag, so can count himself lucky there. Liam Shields from North Melbourne as well, hanging up the boots this year. Always around the mark for North Melbourne.
Yeah, look, and again, someone who got the absolute utmost out of himself, very well respected at Hawthorn, finishes off at North Melbourne, a good, consistent contributor, role player who did his job.
Yep. And did it very well.
Yes.
And to finish us off, the last one there is Andrew Gaff from the West Coast Eagles.
Yeah, look, very good player, but probably just fell away. And let's be honest, he's really struggled for the last 2 to 3 years. You know, it's a bit bizarre. You can make a case that he never really came back after he belted Brayshaw. It's
an interesting
fascinating.
One, isn't it? All right, mate. Let's have a look at what's coming up. Friday, Past Players, Past Legends, Craig Burton, Part 2. And on our local Legends flashback, David Kuzna from the Woodville West Torrens Footy Club.
You're listening to the Game On Podcast. We'll be right back after this short break.
A dents and scratches putting a dent in your day? Introducing Roger Steen Crash Repairs Adelaide, your trusted solution for automotive woes. With over 2 decades of expertise, Roger Steen Crash Repairs guarantees top-notch service, restoring your vehicle to its former glory in no time. From minor dings to major collisions, our skilled technicians handle it all with precision and care, using state-of-the-art equipment and techniques.
Roger Steen Crash Repairs saved my car. It looks brand new.
Fast, friendly and reliable. I wouldn't trust anyone else with my vehicle. Don't let accidents slow you down. Visit Roger Steen Crash Repairs Adelaide at 14 Penner Avenue, Glynde, for quality service you can count on. And here's a special offer just for our listeners. Mention this podcast and receive a $100 discount on your repair. Roger Steen Crash Repairs Adelaide. Excellence in every repair.
Flashbacks.
All right, and today on Flashbacks, we're taking it all the way back to 2004 with Geelong and Brisbane playing off in a preliminary final. The 2004 season saw Brisbane remain top portion of the ladder for most of the season, reaching the finals in second position. Brisbane controversially had to travel to Melbourne to play against Geelong in the preliminary final due to contract being enforced at the MCG. Mate, what are your thoughts on not only that, but we're going to have a look at the game.
Lee Matthews has always maintained that cost them. I reckon we could also do Nord Glenelg. We've got Nord Glenelg from 1950, 75 and 82.
82, exactly right. I did think about chucking that one in there, but I thought we might actually add that as part of the interviews with JK. So we'll get on with that. All right, sit back and enjoy the last couple of minutes of this final.
Now Lynch, Eckermanis can run in and drive it home. The goalkeeper. McCarty was swamped in the middle. And Brisbane seized the ball and finished the job.
Again, the ball got over the back, and Cameron Mooney, as the defender, just cannot let the ball get over the back. The ball was kicked towards Bradshaw, and you just love to see a couple of those Geelong defenders scarlet in.
Hacked out of the pack inside the Cats 50. Steve Johnson can't gather possession. In there is Black, right underground handball to Johnson. A fancy one back to Black. Turnover. Kingsley to Ling. 45 out. He goes for home. Pike against Corey. Joel Torrey surely can't miss.
No, he can't. He can't.
He is 2 metres out on a 45-degree angle. This to make it 3 points the difference. Again, disposal number 30. He puts it inside 50. Lynch.
Can he kick straight? What's he kick, Quarters?
Alistair Lynch tonight has kicked 1 goal for. He's dishing off to Carousella.
Well, that just shows you he's got no confidence.
This won't quite be the sealer, but it will go a long way towards ensuring a Brisbane victory. That is good enough. Graham's got it. Free kick. Mark, whatever you like. To Enright.
Just got to move it. Keep it going.
There it is. Yes, says Lee Matthews. And the Lions get a chance to equal history.
Obviously, due to the game being transferred, obviously, to the MCG, despite the setback, Brisbane beat Geelong and reached the grand final for the 4th consecutive year. Their opponents was Port Adelaide on this occasion, and obviously very, very good for Port fans. Is there a case maybe that they might meet each other this year?
Yeah, still a possibility, well and truly.
Absolutely. Some star-studded players in there. We've talked Ackermanis, Brown, Voss, Black, Ablett Jr. for Geelong, and a smattering of players that were around the mark. Obviously, this is a grand final that unfortunately Brisbane sort of having that extra week of travel didn't hold them in good stead, and Port got a hold of them in the end, didn't they?
It hurt. Nah, it's all Roger James's fault. Bloody Lord Voldemort getting him up in the prelim final.
Absolutely. All right, mate, let's move on to the extra time. Big finish.
Extra time. Big finish.
All right, mate, to kick us off with the extra time big finish today, tennis. The Australians have represented pretty well in the Davis Cup, both winning some results, obviously qualifying now for the November finals. A little bit of a hiccup against Spain. It's left them in a little bit of a tough spot, unfortunately. But other than that, some strong victories against France and the Czech Republic earlier on in the week held them in good stead. To finish top of their group, their possible opponents could be Italy or the US. So it doesn't get any easier from here, mate.
No, and it's still, for mine, disappointing compared to how big the Davis Cup used to be. It's being honest, it's only sports nuts who even realise it's been on this week. And, yeah, lack of publicity, it's just pushed in the background, where the Davis Cup used to be bigger than Ben-Hur.
Yep.
Especially when we played the US, and, yeah, that was huge.
Well, can you imagine doing the home and away ties with
I
playing the US? But anyway.
Yeah, I don't get it.
They've tried to fit it into the schedule so that way everybody's in the one area at one time.
I just like the home and away where it used to be big in your country when you did it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll leave it there. We'll talk briefly the NRL. All I'm going to say is the Melbourne Storm have done it again. They're top of the table and doing really, really good things. We'll follow that one a little bit more as it goes along. In the soccer, Travis Dodd is back at
good
United
news.
as an assistant coach. That is great news for Adelaide United.
Yeah, much loved. Not only as a player, but then as a coach, he's been well respected around the trap. So, yeah, it's good news.
Yep, absolutely. And on soccer, we'll stick with that. Australia's World Cup qualifying shocker has Graham Arnold in the hot seat.
Has to be. Been very, very, very poor.
Well, ordinary is probably another good word for that one there. Cricket, mate, you've got some news on some cricket?
Yeah, so I don't know if many people might follow English county cricket. Now, Somerset, I've got to be honest, they are my side.
Yep.
Don't blame me. Parents, it is Somerset is my middle name.
Yes.
Named after my grandfather, and that back then your middle name used to be where you were born.
Okay.
So that's where it comes from. So I've
that makes
always
sense.
followed Somerset.
Yes.
And Archie Vaughan, so son
Son
of,
of, yep.
and Jack Leach spun them to victory, and Surrey were trying to hold on because Surrey are currently in front, and if they'd basically managed to hold on for the draw, that had just about as assured the championship.
Yep. And I think they did it with about 15 minutes to spare,
I
think it was, or maybe less,
Yeah. So, and ironic, Frank Worrell, Worrell had played for the bowling for the Redbacks, was the last player dismissed. So he qualified. He's now over. He signed a 3 or 4 year contract because he had dual passport.
Oh, okay.
So he qualifies not as an import. So it was almost too good an offer to knock back.
Absolutely. Any other cricket news rattling around the traps,
so we
mate?
had the 2020. Travis Head smashed him in the first game for Australia, then to win reasonably comfortably in the end. Second game, Australia batted okay, got 190 odd, but then Livingston smashed us, got 87, and they got him with an over to spare. Matty Short took 5 wickets, but from the strikers, obviously Victorian player, and that. But then the third one got washed out. But again, you're only following that as cricket.
Nuffies, yep.
And as Peter Crossing said, is there a day in the year where there isn't a 2020 game played which you forget who's won or lost within 2 minutes of it finishing?
Yep.
Which, Norts for mine nailed that. And so then the one day start. We're now recording on Tuesday night. They start Thursday night.
Yep. Perfect. We'll follow that one with great interest. Hopefully we can get a bit more interest in it. All right, let's finish off with a couple of general topics, and then we'll finish off with the big rulebook rant. Jack Darling having a medical at North Melbourne. Is this a good move for the Roos?
Personally, North Melbourne are hell-bent on getting some experience in. For mine, Jack Darling, the game went past him 2 years ago. This is a great superannuation retirement fund. If he comes through, I'll say I was totally wrong. Well done to Alistair Clarkson, North Melbourne. But personally, it's a huge no.
For me, it's probably in the same boat, mate. I wanted to get this for you from the umpiring point of view. I don't know if you've seen the footage. Team awarded a 50 after the siren. There was a free kick. It was after the siren. Free kick had been paid. Everyone's run onto the ground thinking that the game's over. They've won the grand final. 50 metres is paid. The other team kicks the goal. They win the grand final. What are your thoughts, mate? Right or wrong?
Unfortunately, that's the rule. It's not whether we like it or not. That's the rule. Like people jumping up and down on the sling tackles and the bumps. Well, as we've spoken about concussion, the game's got to change. It's not and that one, it's a rule. I'm sorry.
Yep.
It's exactly the same with jumping in the swimming pool before the end of a race there, and that has happened where teams have been disqualified.
Australia was a classic example at the Olympics.
Yeah. So you just got to be smarter.
I agree with you, but just the circumstances of a grand final, local club,
got to be smarter.
Yep. Fair call. Leading candidate emerges for the Eagles' top job. It's come from left field. Hayden Skipworth seems to be mentioned.
Yeah, look.
That was a surprise for me.
Yeah, he's been well respected around the coaching traps for a while, and he's sort of been hopefully trying to get himself out there. Look, he's someone I admire greatly because he was always the last player picked.
Yep.
And ironically, that goes right back to he made the state primary school side the year when I umpired and was involved. I then sat on selection because Rodney Maynard and I umpired their trial games.
Yes.
And Hayden Skipworth was the last player picked. And he then went through to have an AFL career with Adelaide and Essendon. And now he's been coaching ever since. So, yeah, full credit to him.
Absolutely. And to finish us off before the rulebook rant, mate, the Grand Prix, Oscar Piastri wins again.
Yeah, well done. And good publicity and great for Australia, and well done. Hopefully he keeps it going.
Absolutely. All right, mate, we've been waiting all episode for this one. Let's play this one.
Rulebook rant.
All right, mate, take it away.
AFL, due governance of the game. Get the stars out your eyes. If anything has been a dismal failure, it has been Dylan and Kane. Oh, my goodness. The stupidity of Hinkley, the fine, just so overboard. Instead of just a phone call or a thing, bang, it's moved on. A Mickey Mouse incident, which is so ridiculously blown out of proportion. And then you have the stupidity that you're scheduling the AFL bit here and there. You schedule an AFL the girls' game against the SANFL Grand Final. Surely the game had to be here on the Saturday. Mm-hmm. That ain't rocket science. Just yet again, AFL just can't even tick simple boxes. Honestly, the governance of the game, to say it's been a dismal failure is freaking polite. Incompetent.
Bang, ladies and gentlemen, there you go. Mate, we'll leave it on that note. Totally agree with you with most of that. I think it has been incompetent. Scheduling games like they did with the Western Bulldogs, and they need to change that.
Just hopeless.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll leave the good, the bad, the ugly for this week. Good luck to Nord and Glenelg in the SANFL Grand Final. A little bit more towards Nord, but good luck to both teams there, and also to Port Adelaide in the AFL Prelim Final. Let's hope they can prove a few wrong. And
come on, Sydney.
Come on, Sydney. Mate, thank you once again for your time. And as per usual, mate, we promise to do better next week.
Thanks, mate.
In this crazy world we live in, we all need the distraction. Enjoying the show? Like, rate, and subscribe. Hook up and connect with us on social media at SportsCast SA. We'll see you next time on Game On.